As promised, I said that I'd do a video on the supplements that I take during pregnancy. But first, I just want to add a couple of caveats. First of all, everyone's unique treatment plan needs to be tailored to them. So what I'm taking might not be right for you. I will point out a few things that are definitely universal across the board, but then I will point out things that I'm personally taking that suit me. Second is that I don't take all of these things every single day, because some of you are going to be like, wow, you take that every day? No. So there's a couple of things that I take daily, and then there are a few things that I always have on hand for certain scenarios. So let's get into it. So the first one, of course, is always a good natal. So this is probably one of the most common questions I get asked is, which natal do you recommend? First of all, it's not Elevate. Second of all, there are a few different types. The ones I personally prescribe, of course, they're going to be practitioner only, which means you can only get them through a naturopath, nutritionist, or other qualified integrated health professional. But there are also some other ones that you can get over the counter as well, which are great. The one that I've been using for a long time is Orthoplex Pure Natal Practitioner Grade. You can use it for prenatal, antenatal, and postnatal for breastfeeding support as well. The reason why I love these kind of natals is because if you have a look at the list, I'm not sure if that's going to focus, but there are a whole heap of amazing activated nutrients in there, all your full spectrum of activated B vitamins, but the type of folate is just so important. And I'm sure you've heard me talk about this a million times over. You would have heard other naturopaths bang on about it as well. But there's quite a difference between folic acid and methylated folate or folinic acid, 5-MTHF. Like, you'll see a few different types. Some of them are just the same name for this, two different names for the same thing. This one has folic acid and methylated folate in it, or L5-MTHF. What L5-MTHF is, or methylated folate, is folate that's been methylated, meaning that it's bypassing a step to be bioavailable in the body in case you have issues using it. And where that issue will come from is if you have an MTHFR polymorphism. And if you've got one of these, you'll know straight away what I'm talking about. You may have heard of it, or you might not have any idea what the hell I'm talking about. So MTHFR, it's a particular gene polymorphism where you might have issues. Either you might have one from mum or dad, or you might have one from mum and dad, and that will determine how much folate you can actually utilize. So methylated folate bypasses that glitch so that you can soak all that folate up. So really, you need to know what's going on with that gene to know whether you're going to need more folate and whether methylated folate is better for you. Now, does this mean that folic acid is shit? Because honestly, that is something that I see all the time. It's something that I've said before, but I've been researching this topic and I've spoken to some other health professionals, and it may not be the devil that everyone makes it out to be. Folic acid, sure, it's kind of like the Toyota Corolla of cars, whereas methylated folate is like your Rolls Royce. So folic acid is still going to work, particularly, for those who don't have a polymorphism, but methylated folate is going to assure that if you do have that polymorphism, particularly if you don't know, that you're always going to get it in. There is also some thought out there that folic acid may block folate receptors in those with a polymorphism. But what I'm saying is that folic acid, if you had been taking folic acid, it's not doom and gloom. There are millions of people who are taking folic acid and nothing else, and they are fine. But methylated folate is going to assure you that you do get that in and you're doing it the right way, particularly if you've got that polymorphism. All right, enough on folate. There are lots of other nutrients in this as well that you're not going to find in Elevate, and it's just a really good quality product that doesn't have extra excipients and binders and all those things. The only issue is that sometimes it gives you nausea, and all supplements can actually do this, particularly if they contain zinc, especially if you have it on an empty stomach. So always have it after food, straight after food. So you've got a nice full stomach. But this is an issue in first trimester, or for some people their whole pregnancy, where they get nausea as it is. Now, I was pretty lucky. I didn't have very bad nausea, but there was about 3 to 4 weeks where I did have mild nausea and a lot of food aversions, and I definitely didn't want to take supplements. And so I really steered away from this for a few weeks. So instead, my naturopath, Miranda, she actually recommended to get some folate drops. And I tell you, these are just a lifesaver. And it's funny how, you know, you're never going to know these things unless you go through it yourself. So now that I know this, I'm recommending it to all my pregnant clients. So these bad boys, they're by MTHFR Group. And they taste incredible, by the way, as well. So really easy to take, even if you've got nausea. And this is methylated folate as well. So, you know, the good type. For me, being pregnant with twins, I actually do have a higher requirement. I'm heterozygous for MTHFR C677T, which means I've got around about a 30% reduction in my folate utilization. So I do have a slight extra requirement there, but also really, you know, you want to look at the blood work, like what is actually going on with your folate and your B12, because folate affects your B12. And I also look at that through Dutch as well, because looking at the organic acid breakdown of your B12 is much more effective than just looking at blood work, because it may not tell you actually how much you're using, but I'll get into that another day. So yeah, folate drops, or you can even get pure folate in a capsule form, and then you won't have all the other ingredients that the natals do. So if you're really struggling with nausea, but we know that you really need to get that extra folate in, then take either drops or a capsule that just has pure folate. You're only probably going to find that from your naturopath or nutritionist to get a good one. So the next one I'm also taking is B12 spray. And that's because on my Dutch test, it did show I had low B12 utilization. So even though my blood work was showing that my B12 was okay, when we looked at the breakdown of B12 in my body, it wasn't actually being utilized very well. So that can come back down to that folate as well. But taking a good quality B12, this one's a liposomal methyl B12. Liposomal means that it's wrapped up in these lipids so that it gets absorbed really effectively, and it gets absorbed in the oral mucosa. So that's why we love B12 sprays, because it gets absorbed in the mouth. This one doesn't taste too bad either, nothing like this one, but you know, it's okay. So I'd often have that one and then follow it with that one, so I had a nice like vanilla sweet taste in my mouth. So then we're going to talk about probiotics. So there is a lot of research that's come out on probiotics, particularly in pregnancy, but also prenatally and to support your fertility. And I cannot stress this enough. This is so important. So for those of you who know who Leah Heckman is, she's, you know, the godmother of fertility and all things reproductive health. And she's actually really touting this at the moment about the reproductive microbiome. And so not only can your reproductive microbiome affect your fertility outcomes, but it's going to affect the outcomes of your baby and its health for the rest of its life, because you're seeding its microbiome with your own. That's where it gets it from. So if you're going into pregnancy with microbial dysbiosis or a really badly imbalanced gut, which is going to flow onto the rest of your body's microbiomes, then that baby is going to also get that dysbiosis. So quite often when we see people that have, you know, have always been predisposed to gut dysbiosis, you look back through the family and they also had it too. So it could have been that that has been seeded generation to generation and nothing's ever really changed. And that can be hard to change because we are only born with we have the microbes we're born with. You know, if they're extinct, we cannot put them back, but we can take probiotics to fill in that gap whilst you're on them. But probiotics don't actually stick around for the long haul. They come in, do some work and then leave. So that's why taking probiotics long term is an extremely safe intervention. And sometimes I get asked by people, could I be doing damage if I'm taking probiotics that aren't right for me or if I don't need them? No, most probiotic species are honestly one of the most safest interventions that you can do. And that is probably why there is a lot of research in pregnancy, because there are not a lot of things that we can confirm are really safe in pregnancy and then to trial without knowing the outcome. And that's why there are so many herbal medicines that we warn against using, because we just do not have solid enough evidence to demonstrate its safety in pregnancy. And that doesn't mean that it's not safe in pregnancy. It just means that we don't actually know for sure. So these two probiotics are the key probiotics that I use personally and that I recommend in pregnancy. So the first one is the Biome Prenatal. So I would highly recommend you use this at least 3 months before falling pregnant, so that we're focusing on the vaginal microbiome, the pelvic microbiome, and your gut microbiome. So there are specific species in here that love the vaginal environment. It helps to create an acidic pH, which is actually what the vagina needs to be a nice, healthy microbiome. If it becomes too alkaline, it starts to allow things to grow, such as candida. And there are actually species in this one that are naturally antifungal and can help with thrush. What's really interesting is that for a long time, I would always, be using a probiotic and also putting people, including myself, on SB or Saccharomyces boulardii as well. But what I have recently found out, you don't need to, because there are species in here that do the exact same thing and more. That one actually does contain some extra nutrients because, and I have spoken with both the CEO of Activated Probiotics, I've spoken with the head of education, an incredible team. Like, honestly, they are so passionate about the research in this field. It's amazing. But the reason why they had to put some nutrients in this, because to legally be able to call this a prenatal probiotic, even though it's for probiotics, it had to still contain those key prenatal nutrients. So folic acid, vitamin D, iodine, and B12. So there is the minimum amount that's required in there. So there's 500 micrograms of folic acid in this, and that is what you'll usually find in most prenatals as a minimum. So even though I definitely advise taking the methylated folate and extra if you've got extra demands, this is great because it doesn't give you nausea. So even if you're only taking this and you forgot to take something else, or you couldn't because of the nausea, this is still just helping you get over the line a little bit. Yes, I know it's folic acid. I've had a million people ask me about the folic acid in this, why are you recommending something with folic acid? I've actually spoken to the team at Activated Probiotics and about this. They get it asked all the time. And really they highlighted again, there are thousands of research papers on the efficacy of folic acid. It is still the most clinically researched nutrient for fertility, and there's, they wouldn't be recommending it if it wasn't effective, right? It was one of the biggest breakthroughs back in, I think it was the 90s or 80s, that changed the outcomes of births of these babies and preventing neural tube defects. So it absolutely is effective, but there are also other forms as well. But what I'm saying is this can act like a little extra buffer, and it's not going to give you nausea. Plus, the main reason why I recommend this is not for that, it's for those amazing probiotic species. So the other probiotic I recommend is the Biome Iron Plus. So iron deficiency is ruthless in pregnancy. See it all the time. I see it with even my naturopath and nutritionist friends who are very good with trying to keep on top of all that iron and all those kind of things. but for some reason it suddenly just gets drained like someone pulled the plug. What this does that's different to just taking iron supplementation is it contains a specific species that's been demonstrated in placebo-controlled trials to increase your own iron absorption. And there are a few different mechanisms of the way that it does this. Won't go into it today, but this is a game changer. I've been using it in all my iron deficient clients, no matter whether they're pregnant or not, and getting some really amazing benefits. So taking this can work as a preventative, or if you've found out you've got low iron, get onto this straight away. Again, now this one does have a tiny bit of iron in there, but it's only 4.2 milligrams. Usually a minimum dose is about 24 milligrams of iron bisglycinate of what we would use, but that's only to be able to say this is an iron probiotic. It is not a therapeutic dose of iron. It's just to be in there to say this has iron in it. While we're on the topic of iron, this is the iron that I'm taking at the moment. Now, there are actually a million different types of iron out there. The one that I do not recommend is Ferrograd, because Ferrograd, not only it often causes constipation with people, but it contains a type of iron that we are not big fans of, because Ferrograd has a really high amount of iron and you cannot actually absorb all of that iron in one go. So what happens? It has to circulate around in the body, not being used. And iron is actually oxidative to the body and we do not want that. So by taking a much more bioavailable type of iron in a lower dose, but a dose that's all gonna get soaked up and one that's gonna be easier in the gut and not cause constipation, you're gonna thank me. Look, this particular one here is literally just iron glycinate. The reason why I got this particular one is because when I was trying to avoid any nausea from supplements, I was just trying to get things in just that single form. So I got this one, and I think the other one I used was sold out at the time, but there's actually other ones I would usually use as opposed to this one, but this one still does the job as well. And pure bisglycinate is quite a cheap product. It's usually only around 20-25 bucks for like a month. So highly recommend getting a iron bisglycinate or iron amino acid chelate as opposed to things like Ferrograd. Oh, actually one more thing on iron. Clinical research has been shown that taking 2 every second day as opposed to 1 every day has been shown to be more effective for absorption. So I thought I'd just throw that out there. So magnesium, again, there are a million types of magnesiums. Definitely spend a bit more money on a practitioner grade or one that's a good quality magnesium bisglycinate or amino acid chelate as well, as opposed to things like magnesium oxide heavy, because they do different things, but they're better absorbed and can be more effective. But the reason why I love Diasporal, and you've probably heard me talk about this in videos before, it's a Biopractica brand. I've also done some podcasts with Biopractica's podcasts. I'm talking about magnesium in reproductive conditions such as endometriosis, if you want to check that out. But Diasporal, I come back to all the time, and I've tried a million different magnesiums because I also try them before I prescribe them to my clients. And there's others I use too, but what I was finding once again, there were certain flavors I didn't want in pregnancy, and a lot of the magnesium compounds I use contain lots of other nutrients too. So I didn't want to be adding in all these other ingredients that might be making me feel a bit more nauseous. So the thing I love about Diasporal is that it's just pure magnesium citrate. And sorry, I talked about 2 different magnesiums before. The third one was citrate that I was meant to mention. And it's a really high dose, so 400 milligrams, and it's very effective. It tastes nice. And this was the thing that I really loved about this one in pregnancy. And again, I don't use it every day, but sometimes I'll feel an extra need for it. So it tastes just like, almost like a Barocca, like that kind of flavor. Dissolves really easily, very easy to take down. It's quite refreshing. But the extra benefit to this, to magnesium citrate in particular, is that magnesium citrate also helps with softening the stools. So if you're prone to being constipated, and that is a problem in pregnancy because progesterone, when that increases, it slows your transit time down, this can be really beneficial. While we're on the topic of constipation, Another one is PHCG. Again, I don't take this every day, but if I notice, you know, my bowels are becoming a little bit slow, or I notice it seems like I might be having a bit of a SIBO flare up, like just getting that real extensive bloating, PHCG is your friend. So again, such an easy one to take down because it's fairly flavorless really. And if anything, it has this really nice texture. I can't even explain it, but really easy to take. You can start off with like 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon and work your way up to 2 tablespoons, depending how backed up you are. I've been really lucky actually. I haven't had any major constipation in pregnancy so far, except at the beginning a little bit, but lately it's been very regular, maybe because, you know, I'm taking these things. But this is great. You can mix it in with your magnesium and the next product I'm going to tell you as well. So the good thing about PHCG, it's a prebiotic fiber, and it helps to feed some of the positive bacteria as well. So it's also going to help with that microbiome overall. It helps with SIBO. So if you do still have SIBO, or you think you've got SIBO in pregnancy, this is a really safe intervention to try, and it's going to help getting those bowels moving. So the next one is Myoinositol. You've heard me talk about this before. It's honestly one of my favorite products lately because it just does so much and it's so easy to take. And especially, you know, getting a big tub like this, it's gonna last you a really long time. So everything from PCOS, underactive thyroid, egg quality, regulating blood sugar levels, so type 2 diabetes even, it's really effective. And with that said, it's been shown to help prevent gestational diabetes. And even if you now do have gestational diabetes, this is still really beneficial. So I take this daily, especially because I do have a tendency to, my blood sugars just tend to always waver if I haven't eaten properly, even, you know, my whole life really. And type 2 diabetes runs in my mum's side of the family. Me and mum don't have it, but we have to be really careful. But everyone else on our family seems to have it. So really, really great thing to add in if you want to prevent gestational diabetes. With me having twins, again, I've got an increased risk of all these things. So I've got an increased risk of gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, some other twin related syndromes as well. So another one that you might like to hear about for nausea, you know, we've got ginger, of course. So I do sell pure organic ginger root tea on my website at jadewalker.com.au. Ginger, of course, we know is great for nausea, but sometimes it's not quite enough. And there can be other reasons going on for why you've actually got such bad nausea. It's not enough to just say, oh, that's just me. It's just the individual. There's usually a reason, and it's not your fault. It's just we all have different little things that go on in our body that we need to figure out why they're going on. Now, one of the things, and this has been shown in the research as well, is B6 deficiency. So taking extra B6, particularly P5P, which stands for pyridoxal 5-phosphate, and that's the activated form of B6. B6 has been shown to help with nausea. It's even been shown to help with offsetting hyperemesis gravidarum a bit as well. I've even spoken to some people who had HG and they swore by taking B6, but it needs to be a high enough dose and it needs to be P5P if you really want to get that dose in. You may also have things that are kind of blocking you from using that B6 as effectively as well. So definitely make sure you get onto that. Finally, I should have mentioned this when I was on the field of constipation, but slippery elm, which I also sell at jadewalker.com.au. So slippery elm, it doesn't sound very pleasant when you say the name. And there are some people who hate me for it, but then there are other people who find it really fine. So again, a powder, mix it in with water, but not only can this help with softening stools, and it's a prebiotic fiber too, it's actually good for if you're getting reflux and heartburn because it helps to coat the mucous membranes of the esophagus. So even though it's not going to stop the reflux per se, we can do other things about that, but it's going to stop that burn and protect your mucous membranes from that acidity. Not only that, but even if you've got gut issues as well or gut inflammation, that's also going to help coating those mucous membranes as well. Oh, one more thing. Fish oil, how could I forget? Omega-3, of course. Now, so pretty much, you know, you've got your key natal nutrients, you've got your probiotics, and then you've got omega-3. They are the three key things that we know are quite well researched within pregnancy for helping mum and baby. So again, prenatally, it's going to help with fertility. It's going to help get your stores up, because if you go into pregnancy depleted, you're going to come out a zombie. So the other thing, when we talk about baby brain, one of the reasons it can drive baby brain too is not having enough omega-3, because omega-3 gets stored in the brain and makes those luscious bilayers around the brain to help with cognition. And it's going to help with your baby as well. It's going to help with their brain development. So we want to make sure that you're getting in enough omega-3. If you're having like good quality oily fish regularly, maybe it's enough. And if you're not having too much omega-6, which can offset it, maybe it's enough, but usually it's not. Not many of us get enough omega-3 these days. So it is good to just get a really good quality omega-3 supplement and just cover those bases. So I've been taking Orthoplex Bioactive Lipids, one of my favorites. I'm almost out of these, and I'm actually going to try a new one this time, which is Designs for Health. It's also got a bit of lipase in it, which is the enzyme that helps to break down fat. And some people have issues with breaking down omegas and they can't utilize it properly. And it's also going to offset that that reflux of the omegas as well. This one doesn't really give you reflux anyway, and it tastes nice. So that's my top list of supplements I'm taking in pregnancy. Like I said, not saying you guys need to go and get all of these. I certainly don't take them all every single day. Some of them are essential, but always speak to a practitioner to know what's best for you. So, you know, everyone is unique. Everyone needs different requirements depending on your condition. I hope that was useful. And if you have any requests for other further videos, definitely let me know. I will also do a video on what I was taking before falling pregnant with IVF that can help with your fertility outcomes. Bye.